welcome back to A Pain in the Art. Today we're going to hear from the voice behind the intros and the outros. It's me, Leila. Hi. And Robyn and I are going to be discussing fundraising today, getting all that money in. How great. Okay, so in case you don't know, I'm just going to give a little bit of background about previous projects that I've done. So the last proper thing I'd say I've done is my final film project, and as producer, I needed to fundraise £2,300. We set our target to be £2,500 because I researched interest rates, and roughly that would be enough to make profit. And it was something I actually really struggled with. I kind of hated the whole process. I really didn't enjoy it. And I think in the end, spoiler alert, we didn't raise anywhere near that amount of money. We raised 1,700 and something. And then because if you don't reach your goal, these companies like to take things off. So a higher percentage off because you don't make your goal. So we ended up receiving 1,400, and 1,100 of that was on one location. So we really did not have enough money spare, and that meant that we had to make personal sacrifices to cover the rest of the costs. Yeah, that was an experience, and it's kind of put me off of fundraising, if I'm honest, and that's not me saying that I don't have a good support network, and I'm not really grateful for every single donation we got, because really every donation meant so much. It didn't matter whether I knew the person or not, and it's incredible where you kind of realize where your true support comes from when you see that those donations come in. She's not going to be listening, but Dr. Rodinova, my old science teacher, donated £100, and I was like, I haven't seen her since I was 15, and she gave me £100. I was like, I cried. I just sat in the edit suite and I was like, that's so nice. And I just emailed her hi, Dr. Roddy, I love you. Yeah. I know, if you break it down, money is a concept, but the concept of someone giving me £100, I'm like, what? That's bonkers. To keep with the Shreddies theme, I'm a Tesco Value Shreddies girl through and through. That is my life. But yeah, I don't know. So that's just a little preview into my background with it. I'm just going to ask Robyn her background with it, and then we'll just probably have a nice little chit chat and go over any questions or qualms we may have. So Robyn, take it away.
Well, fundraising sucks.
Yep.
Everything about it sucks. I really, really don't like asking people for money. It is just one of those things, unfortunately, that I saw a great meme once that said, support your friends and families like the celebrities that you don't know. And I think that's a really great, a great concept to have, and a great thing I try and keep in mind when I see my friends having, GoFundMe accounts or crowdfunder accounts or whatever it may be. I mean, look, to go to Edinburgh, you need money. That is the number one thing that I looked at when I decided to go back again. It was the one thing that I needed to crunch the numbers on. I mean, if you want to do Edinburgh properly, and you want to be that sellout show at the Fringe and the standout amongst 3,500 shows, you need to have money to do it correctly. If you're going up to Edinburgh for a completely different objective, and you're going up just for the experience, you haven't done it before, you kind of just want to get your vibe of what it's like up there by taking a show, then by all means you don't need as much money. For context, I self-fund my campaigns in Edinburgh, apart from the contributions of our wonderful GoFundMe donators. And just for those who are wondering, our GoFundMe account is still live and will be live until we go to Edinburgh at the end of July. Please feel free to check it out. It's under the tag of the South Africans, and the South Africans, the African family. Look, I mean, I'm very fortunate enough to, I run my own company. I make, as Leila said, a lot of personal sacrifices in regards to social life and things like that. So I feel in a fortunate position to be able to self-fund my campaign. In saying that, you do need a bit of help, and if you don't set up strategies in order to make that money. You're looking at really putting heavy pressure on your box office in order to deliver the funds that you don't make. In 2016, to go up and do 28 performances back to back for just one solo show, it cost me about $6.5 grand, and I didn't break even on my box office, even though I sold out. In this show this year, our box office, our box office is larger than what we had in 2016. I've priced the tickets accordingly, and our campaign this year is going to cost £9,500. This is why GoFundMe, any kind of donation that can come in, just makes such a difference. I had a producer ask me if she could look at the budget to see if there's any way to save money, or to like try and save pennies or cut costs anywhere. And after being an out-of-work actress for most of my 20s, you know how to stretch a pound. Like, you know how to make $5 last, and you know how to, run your car on neutral for like a week so you just don't use up gas, and you know like how to try and make dinner on $5. You look at the budget, and it's the same with Edinburgh, but there are things that you just cannot skimp on. If you are going up with the objectives to sell out for the full month, to become another like another runaway success with the stage, in order to get those 5-star reviews, in order to tour the show after Fringe, because you don't go to Fringe in order, like Leila said, to make, or Phoebe said, my other producer, in order to make money. You just don't go there for profit. What you do go there is to lay the groundwork. You go there to get the 5-star reviews. You go there to get the sellout laurel. You go there to say you were the runaway success, and that kind of show that's sold out where the average audience attendance is 6. You go there to network with the presenters and with the festivals and with the theatres that are there to buy shows or program shows for the upcoming festivals. Touring is where the profit lies. The Edinburgh is the biggest arts festival in the world, and this is what I have found in order to tour the South Africans, is that if you can make it at Edinburgh, it makes it a hell of a lot easier to tour the show and sell to theatres and presenters. Because if you can succeed it's like New York. If you can make it in New York, you can make it anywhere. If you can sell out at Edinburgh, you can sell out anywhere, which we've very much found with the South Africans, and what we're hoping to do with the African family. But in order to do that, the costs go into things that give you the edge. You cannot self-design your posters. If you haven't been to Edinburgh, you just can't do it. And it was so prevalent when we were there in 2016 to see, and I was, I'm jumping the gun here. I'm going from one thing and I'm skipping to the next. It was very obvious to go up and see on the big pillars that they have on the Royal Mile, the companies that had designed their own posters. It was dark, they were black, the titles weren't clear, the imagery was artistic, but it was very kind of swirly and and mystical, and it was very arty, but you couldn't read it. I remember in my head some posters that I had seen, but I could not tell you what the show was, or I couldn't tell. I can remember black and white imagery in my head of one show that was on at my venue, but I honestly wouldn't be able to tell you what it was about. The colors, you use dark colors, they blend in, they don't stand out. This is why we've brought Pulp and Pith marketing on. Sonia has been doing the design for the venue Assembly since the cows come home. Jo has been the head of marketing at Assembly for 110 years. They are the two women who make up Pulp and Pith. Listening to Jo's marketing expertise of how to integrate the new show into the first one, listening to her talk about other distribution companies instead of paying people to hand out flyers on the mile who don't understand your show, that kind of advice is invaluable. The marketing strategy campaign she's put together, the business plan she's put together, the advice on what the poster taglines should be so they capture the audience's attention, as opposed to being too text heavy or opposed to being nonsensical. It is those details that absolutely bring people in. This when people sit there and they sift through their flyers at Edinburgh, they come across a bright, bold, easily read flyer with imagery that's eye-capturing. and they give it a read, or they give it 2 seconds of more attention, which is going to get you and give you the edge above the 3,500 other shows there. Sonia is exactly the same. When I was talking to Sonia about the design of the posters, I've said this in another podcast, she was talking about the different colors. And she decided we had a South Africans campaign of red and yellow and orange. And she said, for the African family, we want to go blue. And I absolutely panicked and went, no, really, please don't. We've got this whole campaign. I've just spoken to Phoebe, who's my social media producer. Like, please, I've just said to her, this is our color scheme. I don't want to ruin it. At the end of the day, Sonia didn't really convince me at all. I convinced myself because Sonia knows it so much more than I do. And now looking at the yellow and the blue and the red, it is so eye-capturing. And by keeping the same font and the same similar layout design, there's no way that you could not tell that the shows are related. It is this kind of advice that I will pay through the nose for. Because at the end of the day, if you have people who know the show and love the show and are invested in the show and handing out flyers, it's Sonia going, you need to have your flyers at 170 GSM, which is the thickness paper quality, as opposed to 130. And me going into the printing shop and feeling the difference between 130 and 170 and knowing how much difference that slightly heavier flyer, which just gives it with that silk finish that just gives it a little bit more of a professional quality, it's going to make a difference. It's absolutely in the details. It's the same with our publicist, Anne-Marie Baptiste from Amber Associates. She has been around at Edinburgh for years, and I will absolutely pay through the nose for Anne-Marie to do our publicity. It is hiring somebody who will meet the deadlines, knows the requirements, delivers on time, sticks to their word, knows everybody at Edinburgh, and gets the right press in. That's, again, it lies in the details. In 2016, I hired a producer I found off Facebook. I went on a couple of interviews, met a couple of, not producers, publicists. A publicist had reached out to me on Facebook. I went and had a meeting with her. And this was my first time at Edinburgh. I didn't really know what I was doing, but I knew what my objective was. It was the same objective that I have this year, which is to sell out and to tour the show and make sure that the show is as higher quality and is as good as it can be. And I met with this publicist and she seemed very on board, and I brought her on board. And our venue had a couple of requirements in terms of meeting particular deadlines and sending information through. And it was very much the publicist's job in order to get this through. And I got an email about a week after she had come onto the team, and it was from my venue, and it said, this hasn't been sent through, and now you're 2 days late, and you're not going to make this brochure, and this is our networking that goes out, and you're not going to reach our networks. So I emailed the publicist and said, you're meant to do this. It's in the handbook. Why didn't you send this out? This is kind of what I'm paying you for. And she got back to me with a lot of excuses, which I frankly I don't accept, because I don't accept excuses from myself. And so I fired her. I really didn't know what I was doing. I've never fired anybody in my life, but I'm not going to have somebody like that on the team that I am paying for in order not to do their job. And it was the best thing I ever did, because I found Anne-Marie. And I just love Anne-Marie, and I just want to marry her. And it is absolutely finding that thing of people who are going to do their jobs, stick to their word, and make sure that at the end of the day, the product that you are trying to create they are as invested in it as you are. And this is why you have to fundraise. You have to, if you want to go up to Edinburgh and you have these objectives of getting the edge and doing really well, it's just unfortunately a cost that needs to be adhered to. You have all the other logistical costs of Edinburgh as well. I mean, you have insurance, you have the venue hire. Our venue this year is on the Royal Mile, so the cost for it is a lot higher than having one in the new town. We have merchandise this time around. We have set up an account on teespring.com, and that's teespring.com. Suddenly realized I can't spell Teespring. And our merchandise is on there with all of our branding, with all of the South Africans and the African family branding. And this is kind of where we're starting to go with the shows. And after the response of our couple of living room performances that we've performed as part of our fundraising, anyway, the South Africans is really starting to gain traction, and people know the show and love the show. And we've done so much press on the show around the world that it made sense for Anne Marie to tell us to start creating merchandise. And you can go onto Teespring, and if you need a new coffee mug, or we've got so much merchandise on there. I personally love the coffee mugs. I just think they're amazing. Go on and have a look. It's that kind of information that I just would never have known if I didn't have a professional like her on the team guiding the shows and guiding the product and towards the right direction. But you're right. Our GoFundMe account, and having to reach out to people and ask them to donate, or even to set up a living room performance, which is another pillar of our fundraising. We market it very much as, you don't need to go to the theatre comes to you. It's fringe theatre. The shows are set in a domestic setting. We have a minimum of 5 attendees. We roll up with the suitcase, we set up the show, people put on drinks and nibbles, and you don't have to go to the theatre. The award-winning theatre comes to you and performs in your living room. We've done 2 already as part of our fundraising, and everybody just pays £10 a head. It's so brilliant, and it's so low key, and it's such an enjoyable evening, and we love doing it. And it's just so much easier to do something like that as opposed to having to reach out to the personal networks and ask for money. I'm a big believer in self-sufficiency. I'm a big believer in making things happen if you want things to happen. So asking for money goes against my ethos. But sometimes I know that people do really want to be a part of it, and people do want to support things like this and support people that they love. I know that I feel like that as well. My poor friend was doing something, and I won't say what, but she had an account, and it really it wasn't going great. And I reached out to my networks and just kind of hustled a few of my friends to contribute. When you know somebody is incredibly passionate about what they do, and you know they just need a little bit of assistance in order for the product to be as good as it can be, I am more than willing to reach into my pocket and contribute. I just think the hardest thing about doing the GoFundMe is trying to find an angle that resonates with people, because it does sound very indulgent, going, I'm doing this show and it's a solo show and it's my show and I need your help me satisfy my dream. It's not about that. It's about creating theater and creating the most standout product that you can. Did you find that when you were asking for money it felt a bit self-indulgent?
For sure, I definitely did find it somewhat self-indulgent. I suppose because I was working with a group, slightly less so. But it just didn't sit right with me asking for money. I really hated it. Because I don't know, like, yes, I want to make the best product I can make, and that's so important. And of course, I was passionate about what I was making, but there was this part of me that was just like, people's money should go on other things. If people need food to live, if people need food to do their petrol, or if people aren't doing well, put that money first. That money comes first for everything. And like, I didn't necessarily grow up poor, but I grew up on a single income family, and like, I've had to make sacrifices throughout, like, being a child. Like, oh, you can't go to this class anymore because they've raised the cost and it's too much money. Like, I literally got kicked out of a theatre school because they were like, oh, we've raised the money and you can't do it anymore. And so I'm just like, oh, that's a horrible feeling. So I just feel like, and I'd always feel guilt because, like, if I wanted to spend money on something, obviously when you're a child it's your parents' money, I'd feel so much guilt. Like, I remember I used to have saxophone lessons over £95 a term, and giving over that check of 95 quid, oh my god, did I feel guilty as sin. I was like, this is dreadful. My mum could have, this is like 2 months worth of shopping, or filling up the car like so many times. And I think, like, for me, I think because, like, when you come from that sort of background and you're always thinking of money as like survival first, novelty second, which I know a lot of people do even if you're not from that sort of background, asking other people for money, and obviously people like my friends who we all sort of come from a similar background, I was like, you really don't have to give me the money. Like, I felt so guilty being like, oh, can I have some money for this? Like, it's a project, haha. Whereas I was like, no, I know you have money to like feed your children, because two of my friends have their teenage mums. I was like, that's got to be so much more important than, oh, Leila's doing her uni production. And I don't know, I just feel guilt, and then I also feel the pressure of like, it has to be amazing because this is money that they have sacrificed, and I need to make a film and a product that is worth every single penny that people have donated. Not so much that I've spent, that they've donated. And I think that's what resonates with me.
Yeah, I totally understand that. I wonder if that's where the difference lies, is that it's a professional. This is a professional company, and the product we are performing is professional, and it's been in 250 Spiegel tent sellout performances, and it will go on tour, and we're intercontinental now. I mean, the South Africans is, I fly on Monday back to New Zealand in order to perform, and the festivals fly us back, and one of my producers and I are going on tour for 6 weeks at the end of the year. That was very South African. At the end of the year, top and bottom to New Zealand. It is very much this thing of the angle that I found that makes me feel less guilty is going, you know me, and you know what a perfectionist I am, and you know that I don't settle for second best. And this is probably to my detriment as an actor, is that I have absolutely no chill. I think I've said this in a previous podcast. No chill whatsoever. I take things incredibly seriously, and I'm highly competitive, and I want to be the best. I want to be number one. And I think it's because my parents are tennis champions in their age range, and every time I talk to them, they've won another tennis tournament. And my mother has been doing ballet since she could walk, and my father used to be heavily into sport. So my brother and I think, are highly competitive. We can't play board games in my family. My father once freaked out because he didn't know who Nicole Kidman was, and Articulate, and my mum couldn't believe that he didn't know who Nicole Kidman was, and then he got up and left the table. And we haven't played Articulate since. I don't come to play around. If I am going to create shows, if I'm going to do this, and this is why Edinburgh this year took a lot of deliberation, because Edinburgh 2016 really took it out of me. But the response from it and the audience reactions to the show, the goal was to create this show that was so slick and simple. And I love people like, I was just talking about this last night at the living room performance. I love people like Rowan Atkinson. And I love people like Chris Lilly. I don't know if you know Chris Lilly, who's the creator of Summer Heights High and We Can Be Heroes. And he's just got a new show on Netflix called Lunatics, where really I personally think he peaked at Summer Heights High. Sorry, Chris Lilly, if you're listening. You're probably not, but Summer Heights High is genius. But it's those kinds of physical acting, that physical theatricalness, that multi-character exploration of social observation. It's so fascinating. And those people, to me, make me laugh like nothing on end. I was obsessed with Rowan Atkinson probably when I was doing my postgrad in journalism, and I got really sick, and for 3 days I watched nothing but Mr. Bean. And then I watched a documentary on how Mr. Bean came to be, and then I watched a documentary on like Rowan Atkinson, just like on himself. I am obsessed. But it's that kind of thing. I knew if I wanted to create the South Africans and I wanted to play a 65-year-old South African couple, I knew the kind of theatre I wanted to create. I knew the kind of performance I wanted to do. I know the kind of social observation and the message of the show I wanted to get across. I knew what I wanted from Edinburgh. I knew where I wanted the show to go. And it was the response of walking down the Royal Mile and hearing, this was just one day, a 14-year-old boy behind me going, hey, it's the South Africans, Mum, Dad, it's the South Africans, come here. And then this father came running up to me and he was like, oh, we saw your show last night. It was absolutely brilliant and you were absolutely amazing. And the wife came up to me and she's like, oh, we just saw it. We just thought you were so brilliant. We loved the show. And then the 14-year-old boy is standing there going, oh my God, you were so good. And I was like laughing so much. And then the 8-year-old brother comes up and he's like, I didn't see it, but I heard it was really good. And I'm just kind of, stuck for words on the Royal Mile, shaking these people's hands. And the South African woman who stayed outside in the foyer after the show and was sobbing and like I came out and her husband was like, can you just, my wife just wants to meet you. And she's sitting there and she was sobbing and she was like, it's our story. It's our story. You've written our story. Like, we tried to get out. We tried to get out of South Africa in the 1970s. We tried to come here. We couldn't get visas. We tried to go to Canada in the 1980s. They wouldn't take us. We're still there. We're still in South Africa. We can't get out. Like, you've written our story. I went out onto the street and burst into tears because that's the kind of reaction that makes it all worthwhile. That's the kind of reaction of why I create theatre and why I want the African family to be as effective, if not more so. I know if I can do 2 characters, I can do 4. But I know if I can elicit that kind of reaction, then going down the crowdfunder route makes it easier. It makes it, even though I feel, as New Zealand would say, I feel real stink. I feel real stink asking people to give me money again 3 years later when they have contributed to the first crowdfunding. And the first, I think we did crowdfunder in 2016. And I felt awful because we had a muck up with the rewards. So people donated money and didn't even get their rewards. And it wasn't until, my God, until 2 months before I started the Edinburgh campaign and I realized that people hadn't gotten their rewards, I had to eat massive humble pie and reach out again and go, I'm so sorry. I realized you didn't get your rewards from 3 years ago, and rectify that mistake before I could put another GoFundMe account up and go, well, hi, I'm back. I know you didn't get your reward. Can I please have some more money? You feel awful about doing it, but in the back of my mind, I think to myself, the show is going to tour. I know it's going to tour. I know we can do so well at Edinburgh. It's just, I've got a really passionate team behind me. We can do this. So in my head, the angle was, look at what the South Africans did and look at what you were a part of. And I'm so sorry you didn't get your reward. And by the way, we sent all the rewards out. And if you're listening to this, if you haven't got your reward, please email the South Africans account because we will send you tenfold rewards. I'm pretty sure we've got them all out, Leila. I'm pretty sure we do. But there may have been one that slipped through the bloody net. But this time we're onto it. The rewards are already going out. We know what we're doing. I've got 2 team members dedicated to that, as well as receiving your reward or receiving your merchandise. You are going to be a backer on this show that is going to tour. It is going to go around the world. And I want the backers to feel as passionate about the show as what my producers do. And this is why time is tight. We're not doing updates at this stage. There will be an email that goes out before Edinburgh giving a rundown on what we've been doing. But this is why I hope the social media, people follow us on social media and can see, because where their money is going, and see the merchandise that's coming through, and see, the publicist who's about to release the press release to all of the press, the trailer that's about to be announced that's just been signed off, the new the South Africans trailer that's all been modified. This is where all of it is going. So it does make me feel like a touch better.
I suppose, like, I understand that point of view. I think it's because maybe with my project that was the first time I've ever had to ask anyone for money or ask for like a project or anything like that. And I think I was aware going into it, like a few people in my group came from quite a more middle class background. So I was like, oh, I know they have the money and I need to match that. I suppose when you're doing something yourself, you know your own limits and you know how you personally feel about it, and therefore it's easier to sort of accommodate your fundraiser to you, whereas where it's a group you have to like accommodate it to everyone and be like, when you're writing the descriptions you have to be like, oh, blah 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 is this and he's great at this and great at that, and you're like, then you get to yourself and you're like, I don't know what to write. I've just spent like an hour and a half selling everyone on it, and then you're just like, Leila likes Tesco Jaffa cakes. Like, I don't know. Her favourite film is probably Chicken Run. It's like, I don't know. It's just, I don't know. I think once, obviously, you get more acclimatized to it. And I think when you do something like producing, you learn very quickly where your skill set is. And I don't think mine is in fundraising, but I am more than happy to do it. Like, I like seeing like the little buzz and everyone's like, oh, we got a new donation. You're like, yeah, it's great. And then I suppose it's like when you look at the number and it hasn't gone up for a few days, you're like, this is terrible. I hate everything. Uh, um, I think it's something that I'll have to get used to, in like future projects. And I think, I mean, our film hasn't been released yet, so I haven't had that rush of like, this is my film. Oh my god, people are watching it. They found this bit funny. They found that bit funny. I'd be worried if someone was like, "You told our story," because it's about someone who is horrifically in debt. So I'd be like, "I'm so sorry." Um, but I think, yeah, it's something I'll get used to. With future projects, obviously you can come at it a different way, and like maybe it'll be like slightly more personal, so you'll have more of that like fight for it, because you have to like fight for literally your voice to be heard. Whereas the film I made, the idea and the script and everything wasn't done by me at all. And there was like, I remember there were a few things I didn't like about the script. And those got like ironed out in the end, but it makes you less like not passionate. You're still passionate, but it's less like, you find it harder to word, rather than, when it's something that you love, you can be like blah 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 blah, blah, and then but when it's something you don't really know, you're like, I don't really know how to word it effectively. And like, no, you can go.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say on that note, like, I think that's what makes it difficult, is when you don't have that passion for it, or it's not your baby, then it is really difficult to ask for money, because you do feel like you're taking away money from people who need it in order for something that you're like, oh, kind of feeling subpar about. It is really difficult. I think this is where it's I can get over the shyness, but I'm aware of other people who ask for money on the behalf. The producers like you and some of the others as well. It's not your baby, but this is kind of in the interview. When I interviewed, I said like, it's so important to take on the show as if it's your own. But even I remember back in 2016, there were a couple of producers who said at the end of Edinburgh, they were like, I really don't want to put on my CV that I produced your show. And I said, well, why? And they were like, because I feel like I just didn't really produce it. And I said, well, that's not for like a lack of responsibility. Like, I gave you things to do. It's up to you how much you get invested in it. You either take it on board and you're like, this is my baby. This is what I'm doing. This is my show. I'm going to Edinburgh with this. I'm going to produce it. Or you go, I'm working for this person. Because I felt like that as well, where like I lived on the east coast of New Zealand for like half a year, making pizzas in a burnt out garage and surfing and living in like my parents' house they had up there, just running away from all my problems. But it was that thing of, I remember my boss at the pizza place getting really annoyed with me, because at the end of the day, it's not my business. I would do what needed to be done, but then I'd go home and not think any more about it. And he just opened it. And it was very much his business, but I felt very much like an employee. Like, it wasn't mine. I didn't really care if this thing happened or that thing happened, which is a terrible mentality to have. But it's that same thing of, absolutely, I think, and this is why, like I say, with the backers as well, like integrating them into it as much as possible, and trying to break down that feeling of going, oh, I'm just donating money to this, or oh, I'm just working for this, but it's not mine, and going, no, you're a part of it. This is yours. Because the minute that I remember that it's my baby and it's what I'm passionate about, and it's been nearly a year in the making, like, it gets rid of that self-consciousness. But there's only so much you can say to somebody, like, this is, you've donated to this, you're on board with this now, like, this is your show, follow us, because I want you to see the progress. It's the same with putting together a team and going like, this is yours, this is totally yours, like, come on board, do this, like, love it. Because then you feel to yourself like, you see where it's going. You see, just like the financial donation, you see where all the effort is going.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think looking at it from a producer, I do view it as like, I'm employed, but that's not a bad thing, if that makes sense. Like, this is my job. I want to do my job well because I've chosen to do this job. It's not as if it was forced upon me or anything. And that's how it kind of works in my head. Like, if anyone, I'll be like, yeah, I'm taking a show to Edinburgh. But I always clarify, like, I'm not in the show. Like, I'm not performing in the show. I'm producing it. But, it's I'm still a part of it. I think when I say I'm taking a show to Edinburgh, everyone's like, "Are you acting in it?" And I'm like, "No, I'm not acting in it." And then they don't quite seem to get it. So it's easier to say like, "I am employed for blah 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 blah," because this is like my job. My job's to produce it, and that kind of makes more sort of sense in layman's term. Um, but yeah, I think like it is important to view the show as our own and something that we're all working towards. And I guess that's sort of how I'm looking at it. It's something we're working towards. It's not like it's done yet. And I feel like even after Edinburgh, it's not done. Like we'll be like, nope, next thing. Um, yeah, I think it's just, especially because I took this on right after, or kind of during the last stage of pre-production, production, and post of my film. And I always find that when you finish one project, maybe it's just me, I need like a few days of just nothing, of just not thinking about any form of responsibility in the world. So I'm just like, oh my god, I'm so, because I really did, I put so much into that film shoot, like it was insane. And I couldn't even like, I think I messaged one of our other producers just to see how they were doing on like editing deadlines. I was like, are you good? Is everything fine? Do you need me to watch anything? Blah blah blah. But I remember those few days after, I didn't meet the South Africans one, but I think I muted every other group chat I was in because I was like, I can't. I just need a clear head for a few days, and then I can like learn to love another project if that makes sense. Anyway, to conclude, I'm going to leave all of our links down below for GoFundMe, for merch, everything, Teespring. And yeah, thank you very much for listening. You've heard more than 4 sentences from me this week, so that's lovely. And see you soon. Bye.